Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I have 10 words that myself and my students came across this week that were a bit difficult. Maybe the meaning wasn't quite so clear when translated into their native language, or maybe they had two meanings or very similar pronunciations. So today I want to share these 10 words with you because if some students are struggling with them, that means there are other people that are struggling with them. So the first word today is afterthought. Afterthought. Now you can probably figure this one out by the two words, thought and after. So an afterthought is something we think about after the fact, after the action, after the consequence has happened. So here are some example sentences for you. The marketing strategy felt solid, but the social media campaign seemed like an afterthought, meaning they didn't think the social media campaign through. Perhaps they thought about it after it was launched, after it happened, meaning there wasn't as much care and effort taken in the social media campaign as the original marketing strategy. Another example, customer support should be a priority, not treated as an afterthought once the product is launched. So this is really clear here. So customer support should be thought about as you're making the product. How can we support the customer? Sell this to the customer, help the customer. We shouldn't make the product, launch it, and then afterwards think, oh, how can we support the customer with our product? It should be done together at the same time. If you are ever given feedback that you did something as an afterthought or something you created seems like an afterthought, it means you haven't put a lot of care, effort, attention into it, or not as much as you should have. And the final example, he added the budget concerns as an afterthought, even though they were crucial to the decision. So the budget was so important for making this decision, but he didn't think about the budget until after he made the decision, which is obviously a negative thing. A fantastic phrasal verb for you here, kick in, to kick in. When something kicks in, it means the start of something. When will this be triggered? When will it be started? When will what we've paid for come into effect? So here are 3 examples again. The new health benefits will kick in after your first 90 days of employment. So your health benefits that you get from the job will only start to take an effect after 90 days. You've passed your 90 days. Once the deadline approached, everyone's motivation really kicked in. They started to feel determined because they could see the deadline coming. If the system crashes, the backup server should kick in automatically. So in this example, the backup server has something that triggers it, that puts it into effect to start the backup server. So you're never left with no server, no system to work with. The next one I think is quite easy, quite simple, but it's very helpful to use instead of the phrase old-fashioned or something is not modern, we can use the term outdated. And we can use it to describe technology, we can use it to describe a system, a way of moving forwards, a process. The software we're using is outdated and no longer supported by the developer. It's not modern, it's not what we're using, it's old-fashioned, we shouldn't use it, it's not efficient. Her presentation was well organized, but some of the data was outdated. So I might have created a presentation in 2024 and I'm using information from 2021. That's 3 years out of date. It's irrelevant by 3 years, so it's outdated data. We need to update our training materials. They're completely outdated and not aligned with current policies. So perhaps we have new policies, new ways of doing things, but our training materials all teach another way. They all teach the old system, the old policies, so we need to update them. That's a good point. Outdated can be seen as the opposite of updated. So an updated system, updated policy is the opposite of an outdated system, an outdated policy. Analytical thinking versus critical thinking. The student that asked about these words, these terms, it wasn't that they didn't know what they were, it was that they weren't sure what the difference was, which is a fantastic question. They both involve the same thing. They both involve making a decision based on data or information. However, analytical thinking usually looks at complex information and breaks it down into smaller parts to make it easier to understand. We often use analytical thinking when we are problem solving, doing data analysis, troubleshooting, working with quantifiable data, so numbers, statistics, figures, whereas critical thinking uses ideas, arguments, past experience to form judgments. Usually we use critical thinking for decision making, argument evaluation, so why this person's right and why this person's wrong, or something like ethical analysis. So for example, if you work in HR, human resources, you will use critical thinking more than analytical thinking because each person that comes to you with a problem, it's an individual problem for that person. Whereas a CEO would use both analytical and critical. They have to make decisions based on facts, figures, money, profits, losses, but also their experience and knowledge that they have of the company they work for. An engineer that's trying to find out why something didn't work would probably use analytical thinking because they're looking at data and information and trying to find the source of a problem, the source of the system failure. Whereas someone using critical thinking might be if you want to switch vendors or suppliers and trying to think which one is going to be the better. Obviously, you're not just looking at the cost, you're also looking at the relationship with those vendors, how it's going to affect your business and how you move forward. So critical thinking often uses situations and feelings, emotions around that situation, whereas analytical thinking looks at data. Suppress and surpass. Now, these were only brought up because of the very similar pronunciation. To suppress something or to surpass something. So to suppress means to hold back, to forcibly put an end to something or stop something moving forwards. For example, I tried to suppress my panic when I realized I'd made a mistake. So I knew these feelings were coming up, but I tried to keep them down, not let them come out. The report had been suppressed. So we had this report of something and we didn't let the public see it or the company see it because it would have been bad on us. We don't want people finding out this information. Whereas to surpass is to be greater than or do better than. So for example, if you set this goal for yourself and you look back and you have surpassed that goal, it means you've done better than that goal. You've gone even further than you expected. If your performance at work is judged by the amount of sales you make and you have to make $50,000 worth of sales in a year, and last year you made 75,000, you surpassed your goal. You did exceptionally better than you needed to, or what was expected of you. Access and excess. Now, this was a fantastic question from a student because, again, very, very similar pronunciation, but two different meanings. So to access something means to have permission to open it, enter somewhere. I have access to my students' English levels. I've given you access to the document so you can edit it. I don't have access to the information right now, but I will find out. So right now I can't get that information. Whereas excess and to have an excess is to have more than you need. This can be used in a negative or a positive way. So you could say something like, we have excess budget this month, so anyone that wants free English lessons, go to HR and we can organize that for you. Or alternatively, we can use it to mean that someone does too much of something. They have too much. So for example, he lived a life in excess, means maybe he spends more than he earns. The company's excessive spending was leading to a loss at the end of every month. They were spending more than they had. Application. Application. Now, this is an easy one, of course, because when we think of an application, the noun, we think of things on your phone that you can download to help you with your daily life, play games, learn a language, speak to your friends. An application, an app. However, an application in terms of I want to apply, this is my application, means to put your documentation forwards to a company, to a job, to a person, and say, I want to be given the opportunity to work with you. We had many applications for the position. We had many people put their name forwards and want to work with us. Eligible. Eligible. Now, this is a fantastic word to say and also to use. Eligible. If someone or something is eligible for something, it means they meet the requirements to do something. For example, employees are eligible for a performance bonus after completing 6 months with the company. Means you have to meet the requirement of being in the company for 6 months and working well within those 6 months in order to have access to the performance bonus. If you've only worked there 5 months, you do not meet the requirements, so you are not eligible for the performance bonus. To be eligible for remote work, you must have completed your training and onboarding. So, to meet the requirements of being allowed to work remotely, you have to have done your training and onboarding. If you haven't, you do not meet the requirements, so you are not eligible. Competent and competencies. Now, to be competent is, of course, an adjective. So if you are competent at something, you're describing yourself as being good at that thing. I am competent at creating lesson plans. I am competent in 3 languages. I am competent in the recruitment process for the company that I work for. You are good at that thing. That is a skill you have. Your competencies, a noun, are those particular skills. So I might say I have 7 key competencies. Marketing, communicating, people skills, critical thinking, meeting deadlines. These are the skills that I'm good at. They are my competencies. So you can either say, especially in a job interview or application, I am competent at, or you can say, these are my competencies. Let me talk you through my competencies. It's another way of saying my strengths. And finally today, to rectify. Rectify. This is a fantastic word, a very advanced formal word to mean to fix something. So instead of saying, let me fix the problem, you could say, I'm going to rectify it. Or I want to rectify this. How can I rectify this? How can I fix this problem? This is a problem we have encountered. We need it rectified as soon as possible. We need you to fix it, find a solution. Let me know down below in the comments if any of those words were new for you. If they were, feel free to make example sentences and I can always check that they are grammatically correct. And if there are any other ways to structure the sentences that perhaps sound a bit more natural or better. So as always, everyone, thank you for your comments, your support. Thank you for liking the video, and I will see you next week. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.